It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com, and search for the KABC News Blitz wherever you get your podcasts and give us a subscribe. We'd appreciate it. Well, we're almost a full month out from the start of the devastating wildfires in the Palisades and Altadena and so many other parts of Southern California. It feels like that was 6 months ago, right? Well, it looks like we are starting to... we're not going to traffic yet. It looks like we are starting to figure out exactly what the cause is for some of these fires, because, what do you know? SoCal Edison is admitting their equipment might be involved. Not in the Eaton fire, although there are several lawsuits, including more, that are alleging that, and we've seen video evidence. But no, in a new filing with the Public Utilities Commission, SoCal Edison seems to be admitting that it might be their equipment that started the Hurst fire. That was the smaller one in Sylmar that there were a lot of resources dedicated to. Nothing burned down in that fire, but that could be bad. Let's find out what happened with that as we try to figure out what started all these fires and what we can do to stop them from happening. Because we can't stop the wind. The wind has been around since before all of us, and the wind will be here after we're all gone. So how do we stand up our infrastructure in our neighborhoods to deal with the Santa Ana winds?
Right now at 11,
Here's NBC4.
Right now at 11, we begin with breaking news on the wildfire disaster. SoCal Edison says its equipment may be associated with the ignition of the Hurst fire.
If they are going into May territory, typically they don't want to say anything until they're dead to rights, because they have had to pay through the nose before, and they'll have to pay through the nose again, as what happened with the Woolsey fire and the Signal fire, and then, of course, all the fires that PG&E has started. This is a thing that happens. You have aging infrastructure. For some reason, we thought it was a great idea in a place that gets very windy every single year to put up all of these towers and all of these poles instead of, I don't know, digging underground.
That fire was one of several in our area last month. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Annabelle Sedano. Let's get right to it. NBC4's Lauren Coronado has the latest on these breaking developments. Lauren.
Annabelle, good morning. A lot of new information from SCE on their investigation into the Hurst fire and also the Eaton fire, where we're at right now in the burn zone. You might be able to see some of the destruction just behind me. But first, let's get started with what we know about the Hurst fire. In an updated report from SCE, it states the LA Fire Department is investigating the cause of the Hurst fire and suggests SCE's equipment may have caused the fire. SCE had...
How come the first we're hearing about this is with a filing with the utility regulator, not with everyone telling us, hey, this is what it might be? There's some CYA going on right up there at SoCal Edison. I'm telling you that right now. We don't know that they caused the Eaton fire, but the fact that they're already starting to admit they may have caused this other fire, that's a problem.
SCE admits their equipment may be associated, although they did not share how yet. Remember, the Hurst fire burned about 800 acres in Sylmar last month. Now to the destructive Eaton fire here in Altadena. We've seen this video, a fire sparking near power equipment not far from homes. This morning, SCE said...
And there's been several angles of these videos, including one taken by a gas station camera.
This morning, SCE says they're exploring the possibility that their equipment was involved in the start of the Eaton fire, but...
Boy, they so confidently the week after the fire said, no, we're definitely sure it wasn't our equipment. Now they're slow walking that to say, we're investigating, maybe it is our equipment. This isn't going to be good.
This morning, SCE says they're exploring the possibility that their equipment was involved in the start of the Eaton fire, but adds the agency has not identified obvious evidence that supports that idea, like broken conductors.
The fact that they're saying anything leads you to believe that the admission of guilt is possibly coming. Don't know that for sure, but they shouldn't be saying anything. You just want to be as tight-lipped as possible and hope that everyone forgets, like when the 10 freeway melted. Did we ever catch that arsonist?
Here's what SCE did say about the investigation.
The cause of the Eaton fire remains unknown. Like you, we have seen information like videos shared by external parties of the fire's early stages.
Seeing sparking and arcing.
These are concerning, and they may suggest a possible link to SCE's equipment. Investigations of this scale and complexity take time, and they require specific expertise.
And what's been happening with those lawsuits that have already been filed against SoCal Edison is judges have ordered SoCal Edison, don't be tampering with any of that evidence. I don't know if they would do that, but that's what was in the filing.
But we will not leave any stone unturned. While we do not yet know what caused the Eaton wildfire, we are looking at every possibility in SCE's investigation, including the possibility that the utilities equipment was involved.
The fact that the CEO, and that's of Edison International, is saying that means that they probably think they did it.
Yes, 17 people killed, thousands of homes destroyed by the Eaton fire here in Altadena. And this is where I spoke.
And of course, this is an interesting point. It's not just, about the finger pointing, but if SoCal Edison is determined to be the spark of this fire, then the insurance companies get to go after that utility, which sounds great in theory, except what will happen is exactly what happened with PG&E and the Camp Fire. Maybe they'll say we're going to go bankrupt. Maybe they'll say we have to pass on those costs to the ratepayers. But either way, they're going to bill you for it, for their ineptitude, for their mistakes, for their aging infrastructure that they did not invest in. They're going to pass it on to you.
Yes, 17 people killed, thousands of homes destroyed by the Eaton fire here in Altadena. And this is where I spoke with Supervisor Catherine Barger about SCE's update.
The fact that they came out with a statement tells me that they may know something that I don't, obviously.
Yeah, Catherine Barger's on the money there.
But the investigation should be completed in the next few weeks, and we'll take it from there. I mean, I'm heartbroken. I mean, I'm heartbroken because the devastation to this community is, I can't even put it into words.
Yeah, SCE says their investigation can take several months to complete. And this is infrared video of where the Eaton fire burned. Supervisor Barger says many have asked about underground power equipment even before the fire.
Yeah, I feel like we've been asking that since the last fire and since the fire before that and since the fire before that. I could literally do this until 6 o'clock. This is the narrative that's been going on for as long as I can remember, as we've had these incredibly devastating wildfires. Incredible devastation, homes lost, lives lost, aging equipment is the cause. Oh, we should do something about that. No, it's too expensive. Another fire happens. Massive destruction, massive cost, loss of life, loss of homes. It's too expensive to underground the power lines. If you look at the liability and the cost for all of just these fires, I can't imagine undergrounding the power lines is more expensive than what we're dealing with right now. And if it is, I don't know what we do.
Something she's been in support.
Because I would still say, worth it. Now, SoCal Edison, like PG&E, these are private companies. They have to turn a profit. So, of course, if they're going to underground power lines, they're going to jack up their rates. That's what PG&E did when they promised they would start undergrounding their power lines in the wake of the Camp Fire. And they jacked up their rates so many times that people in Northern California are literally not turning the heat on and freezing because they don't want their power bill to go up. And so in reaction to that, Gavin Newsom, who's all over the TV the last couple of days, he signed an executive order last fall, we covered it here, that lifted any requirements and wanted to re-examine certain strategies like undergrounding of power lines because they're too expensive and people can't afford it. Well, I don't know what we do if we're in a situation where the utilities, quote, can't afford to make their equipment safe. I don't know what the answer is here.
Something she's been in support.
It's the new name of this show.
something she's been in support of and something she's working to implement during the infrastructure rebuild here in Altadena. Back out here live, as you look around and look at the destruction, we know the EPA is here. We know that multiple agencies are investigating the cause of the fire, but this being the latest update from SCE is very telling. Of course, there will be much more to come on this. Reporting live in Altadena, I'm Lauren Coronado, NBC4 News.
So that's the latest that we've got coming out of SoCal Edison. They're pretty sure that they started the Hurst fire in Sylmar, and there's a chance that they started the Eaton fire in Altadena, especially with all of the evidence, like the videos that are going on out there and the possible of a fault. We don't know the true cause, but we definitely know that this is a thing that happens. It has happened so many times. We don't know the cause of the Palisades fire either, but that one would be on LADWP. And let me tell you, LADWP has just as bad of a problem with aging infrastructure and not undergrounding the power. I live in the San Fernando Valley in a DWP neighborhood, and my neighborhood is full of very old trees that are rotted out from the inside thanks to beetles and fungus, and lots and lots and lots of power lines that, if any of these trees fell, could take them all out and start a massive fire in this neighborhood in the flats. We're not in anywhere in the hills. There's no brush around here, but the power lines are so close to these old trees that literally my neighbor 2 doors over, their massive tree blew over, ripped in half with these winds. For the goodness of God that the tree did not hit any power lines, but there were so many close to it. And I look around my neighborhood and I see the palm trees where you got these giant branches that are right next to the power lines. And it just seems like these wind events aren't going away. Shouldn't we do something about it? Well, in Riverside, there are residents who are really irritated with the fact that right now, even after we've seen all this destruction, SoCal Edison is going forward with plans to build more above-ground transmission towers to connect Riverside further to the grid. And they would like SoCal Edison to maybe think about putting that stuff underground. For more, here's ABC7.
Putting the spotlight on transmission lines and the possible role they may have played in the Eaton and Palisades fires.
As Inland Empire Bureau Chief Rob McMillan tells us, tonight opponents have a plan to put up more power lines, expected to voice their concerns at the Riverside City Council.
In the wake of the devastating Eaton fire that some eyewitnesses and even lawyers contend was potentially caused by SoCal Edison transmission lines in Altadena that they say this video shows arcing and later the fire igniting, there's now a last-ditch effort by some residents in the city of Riverside to stop a proposed project to build several miles of above-ground transmission lines along the south side of the Santa Ana River.
You know, the last time I was in Riverside, it gets pretty windy there. And you might build these things really well right now, but are they going to be standing up well in 20 years, 30 years? Are you going to be maintaining that infrastructure? Or are we going to see what we have seen so many times, which is a lack of maintenance for this aging infrastructure that cannot hold up to what apparently is going to be worse and worse and worse winds. You know, I'm pretty sure that in neighborhoods and states where tornadoes are likely, you don't have all the power lines. Maybe we got to pretend like we're in Tornado Alley. I don't know. I'm not an engineer and I'm not a scientist, but I see what's going on right around me, and I've seen all these fires, and so many of these have got to be preventable. It's not like these fires are struck by lightning. Could do a whole other show on the homeless starting the fires, but right now let's just talk about the utilities. SoCal Edison.
This vegetation, which is dry often, catches on fire. Look at how close it is to the houses right next door.
Resident Jason Hunter is one of several people planning to show up at tonight's.
And yes, that's a whole other aspect as well. If there wasn't fuel for these fires to accelerate, would they be as devastating? And that's something. Budgets are about priorities. We should be prioritizing that 100%. And I know that's talked about in the wake of every fire, but then let's do it. If there was chaparral and brush that was 30, 40 years old in the Palisades, that can never happen again. So what are we doing to mitigate that? That's got to be priority number one in a budget. And believe you me, you looked at the state of California's budget. You even look at the budgets of local municipalities like the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, with whatever deficits they have. Believe you me, there are definite cuts that can be made. We can find the money to do that. And if we can't, then we all got to go. Then none of us can live here. If it's too expensive to live here safely, then what are we doing?
Resident Jason Hunter is one of several people planning to show up at tonight's city council meeting to once again voice their opposition to the project.
I think there's a very good chance that we can convince people, especially in light of these recent devastating fires, to put these lines underground, stop the project for a couple years, and do the right project.
Because what did SoCal Edison do in the wake of the Woolsey fire and the Signal fire? Well, they said, okay, well, it's going to be too expensive to underground the power lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise your rates anyway, and we're going to screw over everyone that got rooftop solar, so you won't be independently powered. And we're going to just shut off the power anytime it gets windy. We're going to shut off the power anytime it gets dangerous. And you know what? They did that for some of the area, but apparently they didn't shut off all the power. Meanwhile, they shut off the power erroneously all the time in other places. So that plan didn't work, and that plan has been so inconveniencing and so irritating that the only answer is to shut it all off. It's 2025.
It's called the Riverside Transmission Reliability Project that has already been approved.
I want to see a number. That's all I want to see. I want SoCal Edison to look at everywhere that they're a utility for, and I want to see how much they say it would cost to underground every single transmission line in their coverage area. I want to see the same thing for PG&E, the same thing for SDG&E, and the same thing for LADWP and every other municipality. How much would it actually cost? How much do you actually make? And we got to figure out how to prioritize this.
SoCal Edison is set to build underground lines through the city of Jurupa Valley and then above ground lines over the Santa Ana River, all the way to a Riverside Public Utility substation.
Yeah, of course, because having power lines next to a river, that's not dangerous.
Why is it necessary? Well, right now, the city of Riverside has only one connection to the power grid, and if it goes out, the entire city could go dark. It actually happened back in October 2007. Consequently, the Riverside City Council voted to approve this new project at a meeting last year, saying with increasing electricity demands, the city can't hold off any longer.
We are the only city of our size in the entire state who does not have a second connection to a regional electric grid.
Yes, but since we've seen what keeps happening over the last 10 years, can we build it as safely as possible? Because even these high-tension lines showed arcing and sparking. Don't know that that was the cause of the Eaton fire, but doesn't look good.
But the vote was close. Some council members still of the opinion that lines should all go underground, even if it costs more money, which it most certainly would.
Even if there's a 0.5% chance of a fire, that's a 0.5% chance that we don't have to have if we would just build it the right way.
Even though
And forget about the financial cost, the human cost. 17 people died in the Eaton fire. A dozen people died in the Palisades fire. You can't measure the cost that it would have been to prevent something like that from happening. This just seems nonsensical. And if we don't have a regulator that wants to tell these utilities what they're supposed to do, we don't have a legislature and a governor that wants to stand up to these utilities when they decide they're going to pass on all these costs to us, or we don't want to be honest about what this is going to cost. Because what we're doing is we're building massive liability. No wonder the insurance companies don't want to be here.
Even though the project already has the green light with construction expected to begin later this year, some are hoping the city council will take another look at it.
If it can be buried, it would be a lot more safer, last a lot longer. It'd be a better investment for anyone who's building it.
Look, I don't have the answers to this. Maybe you do. 800-222-KABC is the phone number, 1-800-222-5222. Why do you think our utilities and our municipalities and our government are so hesitant to underground all the power lines? 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Do you think this would help? Do you think, no, it's not a great idea? Do you think it's time we think about undergrounding every power line in the state? As expensive as that's going to be, or is that so expensive that we can't even think about it? 800-222-KABC is the phone number. 1-800-222-5222. This in the wake of SoCal Edison admitting possible responsibility for the Hurst fire, and maybe they might be responsible for the Eaton fire. 800-222-KABC. 1-800-222-5222. Your thoughts on undergrounding the power lines, something that now Rick Caruso wants to pay for out of his pocket in the Palisades. That was some alliteration. 800-222-KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. We're taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. SoCal Edison is somewhat admitting fault in the Hurst fire with their equipment, saying it's possible that their equipment started the Eaton fire, and lawsuits are coming left and right. At what point do we just eat the cost up front and underground the power lines? Maybe we need a giant bond to do it. Maybe we need people in office who have the backbone to stand up to these companies, like Gavin is not, because Gavin backs down every time PG&E decides that they don't want to do something like undergrounding their power lines. What do you think? Do you think it's time we underground every power line in the state of California? Because these winds are only getting worse, and whoever designed this system to begin with doesn't make any sense to me. 800-222-KABC is the phone number, 1-800-222-5222. If you're on hold, stay on hold. We get to you next. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It is the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. We're here every single day from 5 to 6 talking about the local issues that matter to you most and taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC, 1-800-222-5222. Your emails as well at randykabc@gmail.com. And wherever you get your podcasts, search for the KABC News Blitz and hit subscribe. We're taking your phone calls at 800-222-KABC. SoCal Edison has admitted fault for the Hurst fire, say there's a possibility that their equipment's at fault for the Eaton fire, and it feels like 2018 all over again with the Woolsey fire and the Signal fire. And I just don't understand why, with the immense cost and liability with these wildfires, with knowing that these winds are here to stay and only getting worse, why are we not undergrounding the power lines? Why is government not requiring them to underground the power lines? It's not like these power companies are broke. They all, PG&E, SDG&E, and SoCal Edison, give their shareholders a 10% rate of return every single year, higher than Treasury bonds. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. Let's go to Joe in Santa Monica. Joe, hello.
Hey, Randy. I've heard you talk about the chaparral and the burning of the chaparral. It's very good fuel for a fire. But I just wanted to correct you. I think I'm correcting you. I'm not an expert. But it's the brush underneath the chaparral that gets dried up and is sparked much easier than the chaparral. I'm quite certain. And when were you in town when were you in the show when Tom McClintock was on the show in the afternoon?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was.
Okay, he said that it was when he grew up in Thousand Oaks. There were 1,000. There were like 1,000 sheep that would be wandering through the Santa Monica Mountains, grazing on the brush, and that was keeping the fires down. And there were specific. I can understand the argument for putting the electricity underground, but there were specific things that were done maybe 60, 70 years ago that brought the 1.5 million acres per year of fires that they had beforehand down to, like, I think he said half a million acres. So I think someone's got to get this. They've got to deal with the brush issue, and they were doing it before, and they haven't been dealing with it for environmental reasons or regulation reasons, and it's back up to 4.5 million acres per year. This is all according to what Tom McClintock said on the show. So I think that's really important. I don't think you can't remove chaparral. It's like removing trees in a forest. That's the forest. It's the brush underneath the chaparral that has to be tended to. And that's what I have.
So you're
to
saying I
share
should
with
end
you.
my campaign to destroy all the chaparral in the Santa Monica Mountains?
You've got it wrong, man. Because it's not. It's the brush, and it makes. If you think about it, Randy, the brush, it dries up, and it starts. It'll start much quicker than the chaparral. The chaparral is all over the place. You can't remove the chaparral. It's just the brush
all right,
underneath.
well, duly noted. What we need to do is what they did in the past and what they still do in a lot of different areas. When the Woolsey fire was burning down parts of Ventura County and Simi Valley, it didn't get close to the Reagan Library because the Reagan Library pays for an army of goats to clear the brush around that property. How do we not have the goats and the sheep and everything possible to clear out all of this brush all the time? If Rick Caruso is right in what he said, some of that brush in the Palisades was 30 to 40 years old. That's unacceptable.
Exactly. And what Tom McClintock said, he said it's like a garden. If you don't tend your garden, it's going to be a mess. And they don't tend these forests. They don't tend the Santa Monica Mountains or all these other places. They need to get the brush out of there, just cut it up. He said, you're not going to stop the fires, but you're going to make them not so grandiose. It's like, 4.5 million down to like 500,000 a year. That's pretty good.
I think that's something we definitely got to consider. We got to consider so many things to mitigate the damage and to make sure these things don't get out of control.
This is simple and should be addressed immediately. And Randy, I love you guys. Have a good evening.
Thanks so much for the call, Joe. Appreciate it. All right. I'm going to renew my campaign to destroy all the brush. We don't have to destroy all the chaparral, although I really don't like that a tree germinates from fire. That tree loves fire. It's a weird tree. I don't like it. And I also think we've got to have people in California state government that will stand up to the environmentalists, because the environmentalists who do not want you to clear the brush, who do not want you to cut down the dead trees, well, that is leading to more environmental devastation with these fires than if we just logged the whole forest at this point, just paved over all of it. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. Look, I don't understand why we can't even talk about how much it would cost to underground every power line and put out the biggest bond we can. Whatever, we got to do it. I don't want to see another one of these fires or I'm done. I'm already thinking about not spending the rest of my life in Southern California, and every one of these wildfires gets me thinking about that more and more and more. This is supposed to be earthquake country, and I never think about earthquakes. I think about these fires quite a bit. Let's go to Bill in La Cañada. Bill, hello.
Hey, Randy, do you remember a scandal involving La Cañada about a dozen years ago when there was an FBI raid on a lawyer's home in La Cañada, allegedly involving Brown Act violations, meaning secret negotiations that are supposed to be public, involving the State Public Utilities Commission? Do you recall that?
I don't. Why don't you educate me?
Well, I don't, I'm a Luddite and I don't use computers, but I do remember that. And there was a question as to whether a lawyer, and I think, I'm not going to say his name, but I think it's a lawyer who ended up going to prison for something else. But there was a lawyer allegedly involved with, had a close relationship with somebody on the PUC. And for some reason, there was an arrangement with a utility to get some negotiation behind closed doors that was supposed to be public. And the FBI found out about it. And there was some question about whether there was bribery involved. And I don't remember how it was resolved. It's something that, if there are any real journalists left, they might want to look into that. But, given all the death and destruction over just the last few years, what else could explain how the Public Utilities Commission, controlled by Newsom and the Democrat Party and the legislature, how can it be so reckless with public safety unless the money coming from utility lobbyists and environmental lobbyists is just too good?
Well, a lot of our big electeds, including Gavin Newsom, including several members of the legislature, they get their campaigns funded from these big energy companies. And who do they appoint onto the California Public Utilities Commission? Former employees of those utility companies. The CPUC, it's smoke and mirrors. They are not advocating for the residents. They approve every single rate hike that PG&E and SoCal Edison asked for, and they ask nothing of them. They approve, and this is true, I just read on this during the break, they approve that these private utility companies can keep raising their rates while they have a guaranteed shareholder rate of return of 10% a year, better than most investments, which actually has me thinking I should invest in those companies, but I don't want to because those companies keep killing people.
Right. So the motivation seems to be corruption. It's just money.
I think you're 100% right about that. That's how California politics works. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. Let's go back to the phones and go to James in Santa Clarita. James, hello.
Hey, Randy.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, thanks for your show. You guys do a great job. I don't know if somebody mentioned it earlier. I had sent an email to Congressman Whitesides about the CPUC. You know, they're going to pass on the Thomas fire, $1.6 billion. And what does that mean for the Eaton fire? Not only that, have you seen their profits? Since 2020, they've had over $1 billion in profits. How are we responsible for the Thomas fire and now the Eaton fire when they're making over $1 billion a year in profit? Thanks for your show,
and
Randy.
not only that, thanks so much for the call, James. The CPUC actually regulates how much profit is baked in to the amount of money you pay as a ratepayer. So the CPUC guarantees that no matter what SoCal Edison does, no matter how irresponsible they are, they can get 10% return for their shareholders, which is apparently the only thing that matters. Now, I live in an area with a municipal utility, LADWP, and they have started fires as well. But I think having someone that actually we have the appearance of regulation in the state of California, in a state that definitely has overregulation with certain industries. The CPUC doesn't actually regulate the power companies, and the insurance commissioner doesn't actually regulate the insurance companies, as evidenced by everything Ricardo Lara has ever done. 800-222-KABC is the phone number. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on KABC. If you want to email us, you can do so at randykabc@gmail.com. Chris writes in on SoCal Edison and undergrounding lines. My husband and I have interacted a lot with Edison in the last 7 years. In Mammoth, we have a small Forest Service cabin, and Edison routinely cuts trees near transmission wires and removes hazard trees that can fall in the forest. Every time the Edison team shows up, there's a biologist and sometimes a botanist present too. Edison can't start cutting trees until the area has been inspected by these individuals who have to assess the potential impact on wildlife like birds and plants that have protected status. We've asked Edison why don't they put the transmission lines underground, but haven't gotten an answer other than it's not going to happen in our area. I should mention that I heard about a road being built and Edison having to have people evaluate the potential impact on tribal land, specifically sacred burial grounds. I'm guessing this could also play a role in why Edison has limitations regarding digging in the ground to put the lines underground. It's probably very expensive to monitor all the plant, wildlife, and potential tribal issues. And that is some of the red tape. If we are making it so difficult to build something underground that it's cheaper to build a flimsy structure above ground, then California's got to rethink their regulations. Let's go to Ray and El Segundo. Ray, hello.
Hi. We can blame the utility companies all we want, but the government let the brush grow, and that's the fuel for the fire. That's like pouring a bunch of gasoline on the ground and going, oh, you dropped a match.
No, you're totally right about that. That is a failure that we've known about for a very long time. And what you're going to see is city blaming county, county blaming state, everyone saying, well, that's not my jurisdiction. And instead of them just cleaning it up, because we know these winds are going to happen, and we know that sometimes the infrastructure is not going to hold up. So you're totally right about that, Ray. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. Programming note, tomorrow I'm going to be live in Orange County with John Phillips, so come see us. We're going to be at Rove in Santa Ana. It is a full-service EV charging station. They've got a whole lounge there and a car wash and a premium convenience store made by our friends at Gelson's. We're going to have a whole bunch of food there, some barbecue. They're calling it a tailgate. We want to see you down there tomorrow from noon to 3. Rove, Santa Ana, and Recharge by Gelson's are located at 1008 East 17th Street in Santa Ana, off the 5 at the corner of East 17th and Lincoln. We'll be there noon to 3, and because I'll be in Santa Ana at 3:01, there is no way I will be able to make it to the Valley by 5 o'clock. So you will hear a Best of the News Blitz, a happy hour Best of the News Blitz, and I will see you back here live on Monday. But if you're anywhere near Orange County, we would love to see you tomorrow. Let's take some pictures. Let's have some fun. Let's enjoy celebrating the weekend. I'll see you there tomorrow from noon to 3. Thank you all so much for your calls and your emails. It's always such an interesting discussion here, talking about the local issues that matter most. It's the News Blitz with Randy Wang on Talk Radio 790 KABC.